now called Su Chen master and, with a sincere look, asked him if he didn't trust her. Without hesitating for another second, she took off her clothes and, while holding them with her hand, started to smile and ask him what he thought about this. She was completely undressed, and upon seeing this, Xianyu couldn't help but be left with an open mouth and start blushing. While he had one hand extended to the side, he began pointing at her with the other and, with a confused look, asked her why she had completely undressed. He didn't know if Su Chen had such strong tastes. Niu Piyuan, who was behind Xianyu, also couldn't help but be left open-mouthed and start blushing. He couldn't believe what his eyes were seeing. Now started to stare at Su Chen, and she remained silent. In reality, she had another plan. While everyone was distracted, she took out a smoke bomb and threw it on the ground, creating a curtain of smoke. Seeing this, Xianyu and the others didn't take long to realize that she was planning to escape. While the smoke screen was getting bigger and bigger, she decided to take advantage of this opportunity and started running towards the exit. She put a hand on the ground, and seeing that they knew she was planning to escape, she couldn't help but panic. She clenched her teeth tightly and, with a terrified look, thought that this wasn't good. Just before she could escape, someone's hand appeared and grabbed her by the mouth. She started sweating, looked at the hand, and couldn't help but wonder what was happening. The person who had caught her was none other than Su Chen. While he had one hand in his pants pocket, he grabbed now by the neck with the other. He began strangling her and, with a serious look, asked if she thought she could escape so easily. She opened her eyes and asked him to wait a moment and not kill her. She asked them if they remembered the girl they had rescued a few days ago. She revealed to everyone that the girl and her two brothers had already been taken to the coliseum. If Su Chen killed now, then they would never know what was really happening. Just before she could finish speaking, Su Chen stopped strangling her. He started staring into her eyes and told her that he didn't care about any of this. Using all his strength, he threw now out of the building. The apartment glass broke, and her body fell into the water from the great flood, which was full of monsters. Xianyu turned his head towards Niu Piyuan, and while a drop of sweat was falling from his forehead, he asked him who the girl she was talking about was. Upon learning that the girl had been kidnapped, Niu Piyuan became somewhat terrified. He explained to him that the girl's name was Sun Xiaomai. She had two older brothers. He was sure that Captain Guo's men had taken the girl just as they left. With a calm look, Su Chen started looking at them and remained silently thinking. Xianyu started to look at the ground, clenched his teeth tightly, and thought that this was not good. Niu Piyuan approached him and, with a serious look, asked him what he was going to do now, since if they did not rescue the girl and her brothers in time, the big mutant rats were going to kill them by biting. While Su Chen's body was surrounded by powerful energy, he began to look at them with a calm gaze, and despite knowing that this university was the origin of the mutant rats, he asked them which rats they were talking about. He turned his back on the others, started walking, and decided to take a look. Duan Yu also appeared. She hadn't changed out of her rabbit costume. She began to follow Su Chen because she didn't want to stay here alone for fear that Captain Guo's men might come. Seeing that Su Chen was planning to go to the Coliseum, Tian Yu thought this wasn't good. He started approaching him from behind and asked him to calm down since they should try not to get into conflict. Not far from the area was a laboratory, and next to the laboratory was a large metal cage. Inside the cage, there was a platform on which the girl's two brothers were tied up. The girl was next to the platform. In front of her sat Captain Guo, with several men beside him. While he was looking at the girl, he started to laugh and explained to her that if she was willing to enter the arena, then he would consider releasing her brothers. He turned his head to one side. The girl's two brothers had their arms tied and were hanging from ropes. The man in gray clenched his teeth tightly, asked his sister not to believe Captain Guo, and also advised her to leave quickly. Captain Guo began looking at the man and, with a smile, told him that now it was too late to leave. In front of the platform stood the girl. She was holding a wooden stick with both hands. With a look full of determination, she explained to Captain Guo that she wasn't going to run away. She also asked him if he really intended to release her brothers. Captain Guo began to point at her with his finger, and with a smile, he explained to the girl that if she managed to survive, he would release her brothers. At that moment, the cage behind her opened, and a giant mutant rat appeared and started approaching her. Upon hearing the sound of the cage opening, the girl who was holding the wooden stick with both hands began to sweat and, with a terrified look, thought that she was in danger. She began to sweat with fear, and little by little, she started to turn her head back to see what was behind her. Once she turned around, she saw the mutant rat. It opened its mouth, which had dozens of sharp teeth, and prepared to attack her. Just before the girl could make a move, the mutant rat gave her a strong bite on the arm. While with one hand she was holding the wooden stick, she closed her eyes, opened her mouth, and began to scream in pain. The mutant rat bit her arm even harder and started to move her body from side to side, causing her even more pain. At that moment, the only thoughts that came to her mind were the memories she had of her brothers. Her brother found many mushrooms, sat on the ground next to the girl, and while holding the mushrooms with both hands, explained to the girl that he had found many mushrooms. The girl, who was sitting on the ground and had both hands on her belly, closed one eye, started looking at the mushrooms with the other, and asked her brother if these mushrooms were not poisonous. The bald man who was sitting next to them grabbed his knees with his hands, and seeing that he had brought mushrooms, he asked him how he could let her eat something they didn't know if it was poisonous. To check if these mushrooms were really poisonous, the bald man took several mushrooms, opened his mouth, and ate them. He decided to try it first. If he did not die, then he would give them to Xiaomai to eat. Upon seeing this, the other man and the girl couldn't help but be shocked and open their mouths at the same time. With a confused look, they couldn't help but wonder if he had gone crazy. It didn't take many minutes before the mushrooms took effect. The bald man let his arms drop to his sides, opened his mouth, and while foam was coming out from inside his mouth, he told them that he was seeing many red umbrellas in the sky. Her other brother put his arms behind his head and soon realized that these mushrooms were poisonous. The girl was in shock, put her arms behind her head, and asked her brother to quickly spit out the mushrooms. Several days later, her brothers prepared to leave. He turned his back on her, slightly turned his head back, and, with a cheerful look, explained to her that when they finished the task, they were going to earn contribution points. Her other brother also turned his back on her, slightly turned his head back, and, with a smile, told her that she would no longer have to go hungry. With a calm look, her brother asked her to remember to behave well and not run around. With a sincere look, her other brother promised that when they returned, they would all eat something delicious together. Back in the present, seeing that the mutant rat was attacking the girl, her brothers couldn't help but panic and start sweating. While the tears were falling from his eyes, he asked the girl to run fast and not to worry about them. Her other brother was terrified, and while sweating like crazy, he asked her to flee quickly since she still had a long life ahead of her. Captain Guo put his hand under his chin, started looking at the girl, and, with a smile, thought they were very noisy. He asked them both to be quiet. One of Captain Guo's men kicked the log that was under her brother's legs, causing the rope to start strangling them. They began to move their bodies and couldn't help but clench their teeth tightly and scream in pain. While the mutant rat was biting her arm, she started to look to one side, and upon seeing that her brothers were being strangled, she couldn't help but panic. The mutant rat bit her arm even harder and started to run. She grabbed the wooden stick tightly, began to look at the mutant rat, clenched her teeth tightly, and decided to do something about it. She raised the wooden stick to the sky and asked the mutant rat to die. She approached it, and without hesitating for a second, she stabbed the wooden stick into its eye, feeling pain. The mutant rat stopped biting the girl's arm and let go of her, causing her to fall to the ground. It opened its mouth and began to scream in agony. The girl's body fell to the ground. She rested both knees, rested an elbow, placed the other hand on the ground, and began to stand up. Despite being very injured, she held the wound on her arm with the other hand, started running towards her siblings, and decided to save them. While the tears were falling like a river from her eyes, she asked her brothers to hold on a little longer. While with one hand she was covering the wound on her arm and advancing towards her brothers, the mutant rat, who had the wooden stick stuck in its eye, began to approach her from behind. Just before she could realize it, the mutant rat approached her and put its paw on her back, causing her to lose balance and fall to the ground. Captain Ghoul put his hand near his mouth, started looking at the sky, and couldn't help but start laughing. He couldn't believe that a brat like her also wanted to save someone. According to him, this was simply a fantasy, and trash like them shouldn't be alive. The girl fell to the ground, and while she was crying, she clenched her teeth tightly, started crawling towards her siblings, and asked them to hold on a little longer. The mutant rat, who was very furious, began to approach her from behind and prepared to finish her off. Little by little, the ropes began to strangle her brothers. While she was crying, she started to look at her brothers with a sad look and couldn't help but wonder why this was happening to them. If they only wanted to live, she didn't know who could save them now. At that moment, Chen appeared and, using just his hand, gave a strong blow to the mutant rat, tearing off its head. He started looking at it with a serious expression and remained silent. The girl, who was lying on the ground, started to look back, and upon seeing this, she couldn't help but start wondering what was happening. Chen's blow was so strong that the mutant rat's head separated from its body, leaving only the lower part. The girl started crying even more, and upon seeing this, she couldn't help but be left speechless. Tian Yu, my Ho Paiwan, and Duan Yu arrived at the area. Tian Yu was left speechless and thought that Su Chen was an impulsive boy. Seeing how strong Su Chen was, my Ho Paiwan couldn't help but be in shock, while on the other hand, Duan Yu was somewhat terrified. She didn't know what he was planning to do. Upon seeing that Su Chen had killed the mutant rat with a single blow, Captain Guo's expression changed drastically. He started to look at him, and he couldn't help but be terrified. He didn't know why he was so strong. Su Chen brought his hand to his face, began to look at it with a calm gaze, and upon seeing that the mutant rat was only of this level, concluded that this rat was nothing more than big. He also realized that it did not have a core. According to him, it felt a bit different from other common mutants. Captain Guo started staring at Su Chen and, with a smile, called him the bastard. He gave the order to his men to open the cage. Upon hearing his order, his men began to open the cage. Several giant mutant rats began approaching Su Chen. They started looking at him with a murderous gaze. He simply put both hands into his pockets, started looking at the ground, and remained silent. Seeing that Su Chen was seeking death, Captain Guo decided to fulfill his wish.